Welcome to the Wooper Club League, Season 14, Week 8, Power Rankings. This was the last week of the regular season. The playoff picture is fully set now. Let's talk about our confidence in these teams going into the big dance. I am your host, IllLogic. I'm the coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey, everybody.
We've got plenty of matches with serious playoff implications to go over, so let's just get into it. First off, though, we are playing catch-up with the Corviknight Clobbers in their Week 7 win over the Baltimore Oracorios. Turn 1 Thundy's Focus Blast and Booster Energy Roaring Moon's EQ combined to do 98% of Excalibur. Not quite enough, but the returning Scale Shot misses. At least Cloaking gets off the Trigger and then gets a Chilly Reception out as Clefable dodges the Wild Bolt Storm. Some switching around. Berserker's Ironhead does 65 into Clefable, who does get up the rocks. Another one KOs Clef, though it takes another round of Helmet Chip, and Scizor SD's up. But Mandibuzz clicked Heatwave, misses the Scizor, of course, and Akka on the cat. A couple turns later, Cinderace crits Pyro into Scizor after it's Terra into a Fire type, and then SD's up again. Follow-up Sucker Punch does not quite KO, so Bullet Punch does KO the Glow King first, but at least goes down to Life Orb Recoil, and Gastrodon brings Cinder low. Another Sucker brings Thundy very low. Wild Bolt Storm misses the Cinder, and the half-health Goldango is finished after it is able to get Thundy down, but then Gastro takes that out. Fake Out from Berserker finishes off Cinder. Mandibuzz gets the Toxic on Gastro, but Blizzard does just a ton back. Ice Cold Spear and Heatwave finish off Berserker. Gastro finishes the low back Caliber. Mandibuzz cannot stand up to Gastro and Roaring Moon either. The Clobberers with that win move up to 3 and 4, meaning we've got up to 3 possible play-in games depending on some results. We'll get back to the Clobberers later. So let's start off with the more likely result that could let people in with fewer implications otherwise. The Akron Agrons have their playoff spot clinched, but need to beat the Noctows to stay out of a play-in game. But they cannot get the job done. The Noctows keep rolling with another good win. Turn 1, Cresselia takes the Ivy Cudgel for Ursaluna. Agnidi's Expanding Force is half to Ogerpon, who recovers health with Citrus, and Mew's Imprisoned may stop some shenanigans. That means Ogerpon can take out Indeedee immediately next turn with a very strong knockoff, and Life 2 means Noctows are up Amon in exchange for just a Citrus Berry. The Agrons respond with knockoff and their own Ivy Cudgel to bring Mew and the Noctows Ogerpon down to a third and a quarter respectively, but Superpower and Expanding Force will KO Cornerstone in return. Here come the Agrons, though. Knockoff and Draco Meteor finally finish off the Noctows leads. Next turn does not go so well, though. Cresselia Terra's Dark, and Deoxys taunts the Sylveon, but it's Jugulus who sets Electric Terrain, and Hyper Voice does so much damage to Crest while also knocking out Deoxys even as Trick Room goes up. Blood Moon crits Sylveon, who still has about half left, so Hyper Voice and Hurricane do double KO Ursaluna and Tatsugiri. One more Terra Blast from Sylveon will do it. That's a clean 4-0 from the Noctows. As mentioned, that means at least one additional team will make the play-in game, and the Agrons are guaranteed a spot in the play-in game now too. With that result, the match between the Summit County Psyducks and the Kanto Kinglers has now become a win-in, lose, and you're out scenario. And it's the Psyducks who punch their playoff ticket with a convincing win over the Kinglers. Turn 0, Okidogi gets the Guard Dog boost from Salamence, so when Whimsicott Tailwinds, Okidogi's Drain Punch goes into Archaludon and crits, grabbing the Oko, and Dual Wing Eat doesn't even Oko Whimsicott back, which is crazy. Then turn 2, Okidogi's Gunk Shot into Armarouge also crits. Didn't know Guard Dog did that. At least Salamence gets off Tailwind, and Charizard's Weather Ball can Oko Okidogi right back. Rock Slide from Garchomp plus Dazzling Gleam from Whimsicott do big damage to Ments and Ninetales, getting the flinch on Salamence, of course. Another Tailwind from Whimsicott. Rock Slide misses Ninetales and fires back with Overheat to chip Garchomp, but Rock Slide finishes off Ninetales, and Walking Wake takes massive chip too. How about Terra Rock Terra Blast from Jirachi? That'll finish off Charizard, with Dazzling Gleam finishing Walking Wake, and the final 1% from Salamence is taken care of. Similarly, the Summit County Psyducks are off to the playoffs. It's up to another win in match. The Wooper Boopers looking to secure themselves a spot in the main dance by keeping the Miltanks out, and they will succeed. A 3-0 win to lock them into the number 7 seed. It doesn't start off well for them, though. Quick Draw immediately activates, and Brick Break Oko's the Lycanroc with a crit. Rabambi gets up Web's knockoff from Metagross does half to Glober, who brings Rabambi to its sash. However, the bug can also Tailwind, meaning Metagross can Heavy Slam to Oko, Stellar, and Amorous, even through Reflect. Rabambi is finished, but Slowbro can't flinch the Great Tusk the next turn, and goes down to Headlong Rush. Metagross Psychic Fangs does good damage into Araquanid, so next turn Bleakwood Storm finishes it off. Metagross can't finish Hydrapple, though, whose Draco almost KOs Tornadus right back. Hitmonlee can't quite finish off Metagross either, who KOs back with Psychic Fangs as Hydrapple recovers up, but Darkrai falls to CC from Great Tusk. Even though Hydrapple KOs, the Venusaur can come in and finish off the Miltank's last hope. The Boopers secure their spot further, and the Miltanks unfortunately just come up just short. We have one more possible slot to be claimed, but for now we'll talk about the battle for the top seed, with 4 6-1 teams within 3 differential points coming into this week. Who comes out on top here? It's not the Wobbuffets, who actually fall to the Close Combat Club, and 1 or 2 different match results for the club here or there, and they would have been quite the story, but as it is, we have to settle for them achieving the coveted match of the week status. Definitely a fun match led by the usual suspect Deancey, plus the government-mandated Murkrow. Check this one out, narrated by our very own Other Michael, aka Fruit Taco, coach of the Route 1 Burbs. Speaking of the Route 1 Burbs, we're only able to take 1 KO off the Calgary Corviknights, whose quest for a second consecutive number 1 seed is looking good so far. Weavile fakes out Slithering turn 1, but at first impressions anyways, and Snarl finishes its sash off. Duraludon snarls again into a Quiver Dancing Volcarona, a second one coming in turn 3, but the Dragon Tail from Duraludon. Nice switch to Thundy after that to tank the Flash Cannon, then a Terra Water plus Sludge Bomb to try and catch Ogerpon, but Hearthflame protects at a critical moment as Duraludon keeps snarling away. Another Hitmontop Intimidate cannot weaken Ogerpon enough. Ivy Cudgel finishes off Thundy. Another setup mon, Calm Mind Latios gets off 3, but Hitmontop cannot finish off Duraludon in the meantime, who gets to Dragon Tail it out before it goes down to burn. Unfortunate, it finishes off Weezing before finally going down, but Brute Bonnet has put Hitmontop to sleep. Hearthflame Terrors to put enough power behind Ivy Cudgel to take down Volcarona. Brute Bonnet puts Latios to sleep too, which allows Ogerpon to play off that. Then it puts Hitmontop back to sleep, letting Ogerpon claim the final KO too. That puts Calgary up to plus 24 differential on the season. Can anyone even keep up? My Bouffalant will make it close, but not quite. The 5-0 victory over Chad still giving good positioning. Turn 1, Hariyama fakes out Clefairy to allow Skyman to set up Tailwind even as Dragapult gets up Light Screen. Air Slash fails to flinch Dragapult next turn as Dragon Dart's boosted by Helping Hand does half to both, but Heavy Slam KOs Clefairy. Palafin in and out. Air Slash doesn't flinch again as Dragapult gets up the other screen, but both screens go down as Brick Break one-shots the T-Tar coming in. Sucker Punch and Sandstorm barely miss out on taking down Skyman, who finishes off Dragapult finally. Rotom then tanks a Bleak Windstorm for Skyman, but Hariyama cannot stand Grafai Ice. Gunk Shot and goes down, though Ursulina takes down Grafai the next turn. Palafin in, but Discharge from Rotom does all of Torn's health and brings Palafin dangerously low. One final Volt Switch will give the Bouffalant the 5-0, but that's only good enough for plus 23 differential, 1 behind Calgary. And to conclude the playoff extravaganza, the Cincinnati Incineroar can tie Calgary with a 6-0, while the Corviknight Clobberers are in a win and in situation. And neither coach goes home happy. The Incineroar win 4-0 amongst controversy. Thunderous immediately changing the terrain to electric. Sludge Bomb from its brother Landorus doesn't even do half, and Indeedee brought low by Pollen Puff. Sludge Bomb crits the incoming Sinistcha, Indeedee swapping to Illumisa to tank Dazzling Gleam a bit. The real threat is discovered as Helping Hand Sludge Bombs KOs Florges from full. There's Tailwind. Sandseer Storm does 3/4 to Garganacci and 60 to Roaring Moon, but Knockoff KOs Illumise, and Saltgear is going to do more residual to Landorus with its new steel typing, even more so with a double protect from the Clobberers, but Iron Crown will take down Roaring Moon right after. Expanding Force will KO Thundy after that, but the terrain is altered again. Indeedee out and back in to allow Expanding Force to KO Sinistcha, but Arcanine hangs on and KOs the Iron Crown back with the Flare Blitz coming to recoil. Hop, skip, and a jump to KO Garganacci, and after official apology for using a second Life Orb on Hatterene, the Incineroar finish with the number 3 seed, keeping the Clobberers from the playoffs. Still got some housekeeping to do, though. The last impactful match to playoffs being the Terrifier Heatwave gathering up their 6th win, this against the Bikeville Pups. Amoonguss can put Hoodra and Clodsire to sleep as Claude does get up T-Spikes, but that lets Corviknight taunt both of them, too. Another round of taunts as they wake up, but that lets an Iron Valiant. In close combat does KO Hoodra. Iron Leaves in. Corviknight's U-turn chunks for 2/3 as Amoonguss absorbs T-Spikes. Bundle will finish off Iron Leaves, then sub up on D-Knight. Freeze Dry doesn't KO D-Knight as it tears Normal, but Amoonguss can put it to sleep, so 2 more Freeze Dries will KO it. Amoonguss puts Lucario to sleep, too. Hydro Pump can KO Lucario after that as Clodsire finally breaks the sub. Freeze Dry can't KO Zarude, so down goes Iron Bundle, and it's back. Thanks, Paul Mutt, as Iron Valiant takes care of Zarude. It's just Clodsire left. Some safe switching into Bundle lets it Freeze Dry twice to KO the Claude, giving the Heatwave a top half finish. And finally, it's not a weekly recap. We don't show the Oricorio. It's getting hacked as much as possible. This is one of the hands of the Boulders, who claw their way to a respectable 3-5 finish. Turn 1, Aurora Veil goes up, but Cloaking does set up the Trick Room. That Veil keeps Ninetales alive from the team up, while allowing Raging Bolt to Calm Mind and Blizzard to go off, taking Breloom very low and freezing the Cloaking. Ninetales even survives the follow-up Mach Punch as Raging Bolt brings Cloaking very low. Dragon Pulse KOs Toxtricity on the follow-up switch in, when Monkey Dory taking big damage from Breloom as Trick Room ends. Not enough. Thunderclap with the Goldango crits KOs. That is rough. Talon finally finishes off Breloom. Terra's Grass, Raging Bolt, barely surviving Pyro Ball, and KO's Cinderace right back. Thunderclap finishes off Barraskewda. Dragon Pulse finishes Cloaking. This spiraled out of control too fast for the Oricorios. That's what happened in Week 8. No more stalling. We need to look at the final standings here. First and foremost, here are your final standings for playoffs. Congrats to the 9 teams that made the dance here. You see the 3 7-1 teams up top: the Calgary Corviknights, Buffalo Bouffalant, and Cincinnati Incineroar, followed by the 6-2 teams: Terrifier, Heatwave, Waterdeep Wobbuffets, Newport Noctowls. The Wooper Boopers are a lone 5-3 team, and at the bottom there, the 2 4-4 teams did make it in: the Akron Agrons and the Summit County Psyducks. Steve, a lot to look at here. We can kind of see and understand what the playoff matchups are right away, but what are some things that stand out to you about the standings here at the end?
Yeah, well, just looking at the standings, the really only thing you can see is the differential. You can see that tight race for the number 1 spot, plus 24, plus 23, and plus 22 within those top 3 teams. A very close race in the end. Also right there at that same level of differential, Terrifier Heatwave at plus 23, and that's with one less win and one more loss. So, a very great differential from them throughout the season, really giving them that number 4 spot. Although 4 and 5 don't particularly matter as you play each other. Wobbuffets and Noctowls, 6 and 2, both of them plus 13. That one did come down to KOs. So, a very close race there, but, a very much different differential. Also note there the Agrons at 4 and 4 plus 12, just behind differential the Noctowls and Wobbuffets that have 2 more wins and 2 less losses. The Agrons, great at differential, going even, but plus 12, doing great. And then the Boopers and Psyducks as well, similar differentials there at plus 3, difference in wins. So some of these teams are really getting a lot closer wins than others, some getting big wins. But, the differential just determines seeding for the playoffs. Otherwise, it won't matter, and it just comes down to who can win these last couple games.
Speaking of, we should hop into the power rankings then. That's what we're all here for. Power rankings, of course, to determine our faith and confidence in these teams moving forward. And we have a bit of a shake-up here once again. I think we should probably just start at the top. We have another change up there. Wobbuffets loss drops them down. But we did talk quite a bit about 1, 2, and 3. So I guess first off, Steve, 1 and 2, we actually did debate a decent bit. Bouffalant, currently number 1 over Corviknights. Why would you have more faith in my team than Greg's?
Yeah, so the biggest thing for the Bouffalant is just the strength of schedule throughout the regular season. They've definitely been a lot more tested, playing in general better teams. It's close, comparable, but in the end, a little bit of an edge to the Bouffalant there, and that's really what made them stand out a little bit above Calgary.
And then, of course, Calgary and Incineroar now completing the exact same schedule as each other. We still do have a little more faith in the Corviknights and the Incineroar. Steve, we've had this kind of the other way around all season, but I think with the playoff picture coming into view, it's changed our minds at least a little bit.
Yeah, there definitely is throughout the regular season. The power rankings are a little bit of, odds to make the playoffs. And so at this point, I guess it would be odds to win it all. And Calgary's path there, because they're one of those top 2 teams, is just so much easier than Cincinnati's path. We kind of talked about this season, those kind of top 6 that were doing really well. And so the Calgary as the 1 seed will avoid playing within there in the round of 8 and will instead have to play the winner of the Psyducks and Agrons. A lot easier match than the Incineroar's matchup against the Noctowls. That alone has really kind of given Calgary the edge to us. Just their path to get, into the semis and then into the finals is that much easier with a, easier match ahead of them. But, they did fumble as the number 1 last season, and we'll see if, they don't do the same this time.
Next big grouping is probably that 4, 5, 6, all with the same record once again. We actually put the Heatwave, who had 10 differential, higher than the other 2 teams below them, but we also did talk about Wobbuffets, Noctowls, very much so there too. What puts the Wobbuffets ahead of the Noctowls here, and why are we confident the Heatwave right now are number 6 behind both of them?
So the Wobbuffets and Noctowls, same record, same differential, both losing to the Bouffalant and both losing as well to a team that missed the playoffs. It really came down to the wins. The Wobbuffets having wins over Calgary and Cincinnati gave us a little more confidence in them. There, of course, is a little bit of shaky history. The Wobbuffets losing that Week 8 match kind of can make you question them a little more. The Noctowls did lose 2 in a row early on, but have had plenty of time to come back and re-solidify themselves with their team, so they're on a little bit of a hot streak there. The Heatwave we have at number 6 just because of strength of schedule. Looking at the 9 teams that made the playoffs, the Heatwave have played 2 of them, and that was their 2 losses. One of those, of course, to the Boopers, where they weren't able to play that week and had to forfeit, and of course to the Noctowls more recently. The Heatwave, a newer team, that this is their first season in the main league, and we, don't really have a great benchmark for them. They were supposed to have, a couple of benchmarks throughout the regular season, but some of the, supposed tough matchups they were playing, like the Seattle Steamrollers, the Route 1 Burbs, those kind of fell through as those coaches, didn't do so well this season. So the Heatwave came here. They had some dominant play that really did result in their great differential, but we just haven't seen a marquee win to really put too much stock in them. So for now, they're at the bottom of the these top 6 teams, but we can really see them explode up with just one more win against a top team.
Number 7, the Wooper Boopers have actually kind of separated themselves from the rest of the pack a little bit, very impressively so. I think they've definitely impressed me the past few weeks with clinching their playoff ticket, and we do keep them ahead of both the Psyducks and Agrons, so the Psyducks ahead of the Agrons there too. Talk to us a little bit about the 7 and 8 teams here as well.
Yeah, the Boopers, their records kind of stands alone, and we do give them that little bit of edge over the Psyducks and Agrons. Even though they did lose to the Psyducks, that win against Buffalo just speaks a lot to what they're capable of. And that is also quite recent, very much in our memory, and is that marquee win to really start considering them more thoroughly. The Psyducks, of course, and the Agrons both lacking those marquee victories. So that really sets the Boopers up one level compared to everyone else. For the Psyducks and Agrons here, it comes down to the schedule they played. The Psyducks did have a pretty rough schedule. Looking at opponents' win percentage, they actually had the hardest schedule overall, but their losses coming to teams like the Incineroar, the Bouffalant, Calgary, and Waterdeep. And what do you know? Did I just name the top 4 teams on this list? They have had a rough regular season. They won the games they were supposed to, including against number 7 Boopers. They lost to the top 4 here, so definitely favor them over the Agrons, who have dropped some to teams that have missed it. But once the Psyducks, make it to the top 8, assuming they do, it then becomes a little bit more of a question of what are they able to do against Calgary next week.
And we'll talk about the answers to some of those questions in just a moment, but I think we would be remiss, Steve, if we went on to talk about this league's playoffs without at least acknowledging another league's playoffs. Congrats to the teams in the Beginners League who also were able to make it to the playoffs here. I think I really want to make sure that we highlight these teams because there was a lot of improved play in the Beginners League, a lot of very high-level stuff here that I saw throughout the season, which honestly I think is definitely a testament to how great these coaches have been, the progress that they've all made. So shout out to the Cloisters, Buisels, Magikarps, Bouffalant Herd, Kangaskhan's, Talonflames, Hypnos, Empoleon in the right of Egg there, making it into the playoffs. Steve, this has been kind of a pet project for you and a good bit of Michael throughout One Burbs as well. Talk to us about the development of this league, what you expect to see from the playoffs, and anything else that you'd like to comment on for the Beginners League.
Yeah, glad the Beginner League's still going so strong. Of note, of these 9 teams, 5 of them, I believe, are this is their first season in the league, 4 of them returning. So we're getting, a good mix of new teams coming in and doing well as old teams staying in and developing and getting better, such that they're, in this playoff position. This is also the first time for the Beginner League we actually have had a cutoff for the playoffs, mostly because I forgot to change the rules when I was copying them for the Beginners League. But it ended up working and kind of making an exciting playoff race here at the end. Very excited. Some of these teams, especially all the ones that made the playoffs, hoping to see some of them decide to take the step to the main league and start seeing the competition there. We've seen multiple teams move up, of course, Calgary, the Clobberers, the Terrifier Heatwave, all sorts of teams, Boopers too. Oh, it's been a while since they were in the Beginner League. But all sorts of teams coming from the Beginners League, coming in and doing fantastic in the main league and making some noise there, and excited to keep the league growing and getting some of this new talent there.
And another big shout out, there was no 8-0 team that just absolutely dominated everybody. That's less so saying that there are standout teams here and more so that there is amazing competition down here. A lot of very high-level matches between different coaches in the Beginners League. As you said, I really want to see a lot of these teams up in the main league, and just keeps getting the competition better and better. But we have to talk about the main league's playoffs here. We have a few questions that we need answered here as we take a look at the full schedule here with the play-ins as well as the quarterfinals. Steve, my first question is, of course, about the Akron Agrons versus the Summit County Psyducks. It's our only match for this first week, which is why we're going to be covering this and the quarters together. My question is this: for which team would a win mean more here? The Agrons, who started hot but faltered and yet still cannot find their playoff wins, or is it going to be the Psyducks team with more experience in the format but really have not claimed a signature win of the season to date?
I would definitely say the Psyducks here. The Psyducks are definitely more of a doubles-oriented team, having won the league in Season 5, one of our earlier VGC seasons. I think a win for them, kind of a return to that, that doubles form is a lot more meaningful. The Agrons, of course, have been here a lot into the playoffs and, a losing out situation. But this is also, not singles, which they are more used to, although I believe they are getting fairly experienced in both. So in a different season, I could say the Agrons, but I think for doubles and the reason of doubles, I will say this win would mean more to the Psyducks.
And they follow up to that. The winner of this match does play Calgary in the first round. Which team does Calgary want to see in the first round?
So Calgary had played the Psyducks throughout the regular season, and the coach of the Psyducks, Duck Dad, did just recently release a video going over that match. So that match is fresh in my mind, and it was close. It kind of came down to, at the end game, Duraludon with an Iron Defense and Rest just kind of walling the team at that point. So with that in mind, I think the Calgary would probably prefer to avoid a potential rematch there. Also, just as we've been looking, the Agrons have kind of faltered more, and I feel like Calgary would feel a little bit better about the match against the Agrons. Of course, I haven't looked in too much depth about the individual mon-to-mon matchup, so it is possible Agron's team might have a better matchup into Calgary, but I would definitely think their preference would be to play the Agrons.
Can't wait for us to look silly and have the Agrons show up here next week in the semis. Next match up is the Bouffalant and the Wooper Boopers. This one should also probably be fresh in your mind as the feature match from Week 7. With that in mind, how dramatically does either team need to switch things up from their previous matchup just 2 weeks ago in Week 7?
I think this is going to be a very different matchup. I know after kind of watching this match, kind of the big surprises and things were some key item choices at the end as well as certain moves. And I think one of the key reasons they were so influential was the surprise factor. So now, especially with that last game so fresh in everyone's mind, things are going to need to change. I could see either team winning this, but it's going to likely be with different sets, potentially different mons, and I don't think the same strategy is going to work for either team.
I wonder how much of that will be different item choices and different mon choices. If I were to put the over-under at 4.5 new mons showing up in this matchup, that would be 2 from one team and 3 from another. That would be new. Would you go over or under that 4.5?
With no outside information about, I would tend to take the under here. I do tend to think the mon selection tends to be pretty much the same, very similar going against teams. You might have like a 7th and 8th you're thinking of, but to think a coach changing up 3 of the mons would definitely surprise me to see, but it is still quite possible.
Moving on then to the Cincinnati Incineroar and Newport Noctows. What a nice matchup this would be here actually for both teams. My question would be, does an Incineroar win raise your confidence in them overall more than a Noctowl's loss would decrease your confidence in them overall? Not just in the context of this season, but overall in terms of seeding.
Yes, I think a Incineroar win here would be massive, just like their playoff win last season was massive and, kind of really gave us their confidence boost going into then their preferred doubles format. An Incineroar win here would very much raise my confidence in their abilities and really kind of consider them one of those top teams moving forward. And the Noctowls, there was a time when they were, the number one and seeming to win every match. Right now they lose to good teams roughly as much as they win. They're in contention with all those top teams and definitely a team you can't sleep on. I definitely won't shake my confidence if the Incineroar beat the Noctowls. It's definitely more raising the Incineroar stock and kind of keeping the Noctowls roughly where they are in terms of how good I think everyone is myself.
It'd be up to 3 straight seasons with an Incineroar win in the playoffs? We're talking about a top 6. I wonder. The final matchup to look at is the 4 and 5, the Terrifier Heatwave, new to the league here and new to the playoffs here, facing off with your Waterdeep Wobbuffets. And I think you have been known to pull out all the stops in the playoffs off the top of my head. I don't know, something like a well-calculated weakness policy Gyaptos. What is your confidence then in the Heatwave to keep up with some of the stops that may be pulled out in the main league, considering they haven't necessarily played this level of competition?
Well, considering I am the Wobbuffets, I certainly hope they don't keep up the pressure and instead lose this one. But very excited to see. As we've talked about, the playoffs are a different ball game entirely, and some coaches definitely amp it up a little more for them. So we'll see how it ends up. Excited to see how they do, and it's very funny to think their brother, the coach of the Corviknight Knight Clobbers, I had the same situation last season coming in as the 5, defeated them at 4 on my path to winning. Hopefully I'm able to repeat that same path.
It'll be a shame when you come up just short in the finals against the Bouffalant this time, but that's going to do it for our recap of the final week and look ahead at the playoffs. We've got 2 rounds to look forward to here, or the results of the play-in round between the Agrons and Psyducks, as well as the 4 quarterfinal matches, but we will be back to talk about the semis and once again for the finals. See if we have anything fun in store for you there. We'll see you then.